The Queen of Sheba is more than a legendary ruler. She is a spiritual symbol, a political powerhouse, and an enduring figure in the sacred stories of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Her story, though told in varying forms across different traditions, invites us into a deeper reflection on leadership, divine wisdom, and the sacred possibilities that unfold when we seek truth beyond our own borders. According to the Hebrew Bible, in 1 Kings 10 and 2 Chronicles 9, the Queen of Sheba travelled to Jerusalem after hearing of King Solomon's fame. She arrived with a caravan rich in gold, spices, and precious stones, not simply to marvel at his riches, but to test his wisdom with hard questions. This wasn't an idle visit. It was a meeting of two great minds, two powerful rulers, and two cultures deeply rooted in spiritual tradition. Take a moment and imagine the dust of her caravan, rising on the horizon, shimmering in the desert heat. What kind of courage does it take to lead such a journey? What kind of hunger for truth compels a queen to leave the comfort of her palace for the unknown? Pause and ask yourself, what would I leave behind to pursue divine wisdom? In the Christian tradition, this story becomes a parable of divine curiosity. Jesus refers to the Queen of the South in Matthew 12:42, praising her for travelling such a great distance to seek wisdom. He holds her up as a rebuke to those who ignore divine truth when it is right in front of them. She becomes a model for anyone hungry for truth, for anyone willing to step outside their comfort zone to pursue what God is revealing. And what about us today? When was the last time you went out of your way to understand something deeper about God, about yourself, or about the people around you? Drop a comment if you've ever taken a leap of faith to learn something new, to grow in your spirit. In Islamic tradition, the Queen of Sheba is known as Bilqis. Her story appears in the Quran, where she is portrayed as a wise and rational ruler who eventually submits to the will of God after witnessing Solomon's miracles. This account adds depth to her character, portraying her not only as curious and discerning, but as spiritually awakened through divine revelation. She is not shamed into submission. She is reasoned into understanding. And in Ethiopia, her legacy lives on more powerfully than anywhere else. Known there as Queen Makeda, she is considered the mother of Menelik Vuvez, the founder of the Solomonic dynasty. Ethiopian tradition teaches that Makeda and Solomon had a son, and that this child brought the Ark of the Covenant to Ethiopia, a claim that continues to shape Ethiopian Christian identity to this day. Her story is not just mythic here, it's foundational. Her bloodline became a bridge between heaven and earth, between Old Testament promises and African heritage. The Queen of Sheba's visit to Solomon is also a story of cultural diplomacy. Her journey reflected a thriving network of trade routes connecting Africa, Arabia, and the Levant. She brought with her the riches of Sheba, spices, gold, and incense, and left with knowledge, wisdom, and possibly a child who would change the course of Ethiopian history. Let's talk about this for a moment. Comment below, what do you think this tells us about the value of cross-cultural friendships and international understanding? How different would our world look today if wisdom and curiosity were the foundation of diplomacy instead of power and control? This tale of divine diplomacy is echoed in real-world applications even today. In our globalized world, we are constantly crossing borders, intellectually, spiritually, economically. Like the Queen of Sheba, we must ask, are we doing it with curiosity, reverence, and a willingness to be transformed? Her journey reminds us that wisdom is worth the pilgrimage. It's a call to those who feel drawn to something deeper than comfort, more eternal than opinion. The Queen of Sheba didn't just come to Solomon to admire his palace. She came to test his heart and measure his insight. And in return, she became part of a legacy that stretched across continents and centuries. Let's take a moment to reflect. What hard questions are you afraid to ask? What truths might be waiting for you on the other side of that fear? Let's talk about it in the comments. Some scholars view the Queen of Sheba as a mythological composite, woven together from various traditions and folklore. But even if some elements are more legend than literal, her story remains undeniably powerful. Myth, after all, is not the opposite of truth. It's often the language of the deepest truths we know. To Christian believers, she is a witness to the truth of God's wisdom revealed through Solomon. She is a symbol of spiritual hunger, royal courage, and the profound truth that God honors those who seek him sincerely. Her story challenges modern notions of gender, power, and leadership by placing a Black woman at the very heart of divine history. Let's get personal for a moment. If the Queen of Sheba walked into your church today, what would she see? Would she see a community ready to welcome her curiosity, her leadership, her difference? Or would we, like some did to Jesus, fail to recognize the sacred in the unfamiliar? Let me share a perspective. Imagine the Queen of Sheba narrating her journey. I had heard of Solomon's wisdom, yes, but I needed to see it with my own eyes. I brought gifts, not to impress, but to honor. I brought questions, not to challenge, but to understand. And what I found was a man who feared God, who answered without arrogance. My spirit knew this was not just the wisdom of kings, this was divine. And I, a queen, left richer than I arrived, not in gold, but in knowing. Now imagine her sitting with us today. What might she say to a generation saturated with information but starved for wisdom? What would she ask us to prioritize? Status or substance? Popularity or purpose? Let's expand this story even more deeply into our own lives. Who are the Solomons in your life? Those who hold wisdom you've overlooked? And who are the Shebas? Those unlikely seekers who show up at the table with questions you didn't expect? Use this story to spark a conversation with God. Ask him to show you what truths you've been afraid to seek. Ask him to guide your steps like he guided hers, through the desert, over boundaries, into revelation. In fact, let's take a moment to pray. Lord, give us the courage of the Queen of Sheba. Make us bold enough to question, humble enough to listen, and wise enough to act on what you reveal. Amen. The Queen's journey isn't just a historical tale, it's a spiritual map. She shows us what it means to pursue divine wisdom, to honour what we don't yet understand, and to leave changed by the encounter. She teaches us that women can lead nations and still kneel before truth. That wealth isn't just what you carry, it's what you come home with after encountering the presence of God. Let's keep this dialogue going. Post your insights below. Share what part of her story moved you. Share a moment in your life when you stepped out of your comfort zone to seek God. If this story stirred your spirit, share it with someone who needs it. Send it to a friend. Post it to your timeline. Subscribe for more spiritual insights that bring the word to life. Let us, like the Queen of Sheba, dare to ask the hard questions. Let us go beyond our known world, and when wisdom speaks, may we recognize its voice and bow before its source. Amen.